Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome you to another video. This one's really, it's 10 minutes long. And it's about how to deal with split quotes or how to deal with overly large quotations in a 3.5 to 4 page paper. So most of you guys are writing shorter papers, and because of that, when you have a really large quote, if you put a block quote in there, it's just pure laziness, and you should be splitting up and analyzing the quote in a way that'll be the most effective for the argument you are making. So, and there could be lots of types of bigger quotes, but typically if it's more than 4 lines on a regular, paper, then it's too long. So look at your Times New Roman quote. If it's in there more than 4 lines, break that up, analyze each portion, or consider how to use it properly. Now consider how to use it differently. Here's a typical outline you'd have in a paragraph: topic sentence, context sentence, evidence, analysis, and transition. Most paragraphs follow this order. However, the one we're doing is going to change that a little bit. Here is the overly massive quote. This comes from Lukianoff and Haidt's The Coddling of the American Mind, which I used last semester in class, and it turns out students were using this quote a lot, but using only portions of it, and I don't think you should. I think you should, if you're going to use any portion of this quote, you have to use the whole thing, and so it explains what's going on with Lukianoff and Haidt's idea of cognitive distortions and social media, and how students on college campuses are using them. So I recommended that people, if they're going to use a portion of it, use the whole thing and split it in half. And so this is true with any paper you have. You could have complicated quotes that are large that need to be broken in half, like this one does. And so the place I break it is after the word other. So it's where Lukianoff and Haidt are quoting Leahy, Holland, and McGinn, and right at the word other is where I would stop it, because this is simply where Lukianoff and Haidt are defining terms. The 2 terms in particular are magnification and labeling, and I just want to quickly show how you would use those 2 terms together. And that's important because that's different than what's happening next, because when students through social media will then on social media will, what's it say here? Uncovering alleged racist, sexist, classist, or otherwise discriminatory microaggressions. So, of course, another paragraph would have to go over what a microaggression is and explain how students spend time on social media exposing microaggressions in others or other small or accidental slights, which, according to Lukianoff and Haidt, a microaggression is basically an accidental social faux pas, a bit of, higgledy-piggledy, stupid behavior where others, of course, think it's intentional. And so for Lukianoff and Haidt, this is kind of, for their paper, this is a very important quote, because it deals with the idea of cognitive distortions like magnification and labeling, together with microaggressions and dealing with them in social media. So in this paragraph that we're writing, we're going to be focusing on those 2 aspects, and I want to break up this larger quote according to the functions of the quote. Right after they define things, and then move on to what the quote is actually, what the definitions are actually happening. So here's that break. You'll notice that I insert the MLA in-text citations immediately. That's very important. You don't want to get lost. And since Lukianoff and Haidt are quoting people, I want to be clear that where the quotations are coming from. So I include a citation like quoted in Lukianoff, page 271. So yes, it is on the same page as the second half of the quote. However, it's functioning differently. This way, it further breaks it up, showing we're quoting someone else and we're defining things. And it just helps as we go along. So here's that first portion, Burns. And then right here is the analysis I quickly wrote for this portion. So it says, the whole thing is Burns defines magnification as exaggerating the importance of things, and Leahy, Holland, and McGinn define labeling as assigning global negative traits to yourself and others. By combining the two terms magnification and labeling into a single sentence, Lukianoff and Haidt combine the actions of both terms to mean college students, often on social media, exaggerate the labels they apply to others they encounter to disproportionate and exaggerated levels of disdain. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. And then you also have to include an introduction to the quote. You just can't leave the quote naked. So there is the introduction where it says Lukianoff and Haidt reference 4 experts in psychology to claim that. And there you go. Here's the second half of the really large quote. Here is the analysis. And just like the first half, you have to analyze what's going on in this half. They are now functioning separately. And so here's the purpose of uncovering social wrongs like racism, sexism, classism, and homophobism. I kind of screwed around with that. Is not to accidentally teach students, social media users to focus. Anyway, so you can see what's going. You could read the whole analysis. Essentially, you're treating the two pieces of an evidence here. It's still the same evidence, but you're breaking it up and showing what the two things are doing. And you want to be very clear what's happening with both portions of the now split quote. They have to be analyzed separately so that your reader is not confused about what you are trying to do. So right here is how they're both combined together. So you can see in the green the introduction to the quote, and the gray you can see the quotes, and then the blue you can see the analysis and how they're working together. Each portion has to have an introduction. Each part of the quote has to be introduced. Each part has to be analyzed. And each half has to have MLA citation. I really want to be clear there. In my class, when I'm reading your paper, most likely I'm going to know what's going on. But quite often, other readers might not be so clear. Anyway, here's the complete sentence. In the black there, you can see the topic sentence. In the red, you can see a bit of context. So basically, I'm stating that for Lukianoff and Haidt, cognitive distortions are only jumping off points to describe the problems they see with college campuses that are amplified by social media. And then I changed the introduction here to say they, as opposed to repeating Lukianoff and Haidt. It's really important. The word they in this case is not a vague pronoun because the antecedent is clearly Lukianoff and Haidt. So please, try to do that whenever you can. And so here's the second half, and at the bottom you can see the transition sentence that says Lukianoff and Haidt's cognitive distortions, magnification, and labeling remain the symptoms of mental illness as described in the previous paragraph, but now popularized by constant reuse on social media, they have morphed into rhetorical tools used on university campuses to bully those who uphold unpopular views. So this transition sentence both interpreted what the analysis was saying and then provided a jumping off point into the next paragraph, whatever it is. On this right here, you can see the new outline. This is only 7 sentences long. Yes, all the sentences are kind of bigger, but it is only 7 sentences long. On the right side of the screen here, you can see the full paragraph. It's around 290 words, but it's a good paragraph. Now, this would place in your paper near the beginning, I think, possibly right after your introductory paragraph, and then from the rest of your paragraphs in your paper would be used to focus on what is happening in this paragraph and leading to a very good conclusion. So there you go. Big quote, break it up, analyze both portions, introduce both portions separately, have a context, have a interpretation and transition, and have a solid topic sentence. That makes for a very good paragraph. Thank you so much for reading, listening, and you guys have a very pleasant day. And most of you, I'll see you in class. See you later.